Imagine standing at the edge of a Baltic forest in the early 17th century. The air is thick with wood smoke and resin. Somewhere behind you, a sealed earth kiln smoulders for days, burning pine heartwood in controlled suffocation. What slowly weeps from that mound of scorched earth is not merely a sticky black liquid. It is power. It is empire. It is the invisible foundation upon which every warship afloat depends for its survival. This is pine tar, and the European powers who controlled it controlled the sea, and through the sea, the world. To understand what drove nations to war over a forest product, you first have to understand what a wooden warship was, a floating miracle of engineering that was also perpetually dying. The shipworm Teredo navalis could hollow a hull in under a year. Hemp rigging would rot within a single Atlantic crossing, if not regularly dressed and preserved. Pine tar, rendered from the slow-burned heartwood of Scots pine, was the answer to all of it. Worked into every fibre of a ship's rigging and corked into every hull seam, it repelled moisture, killed rot, and made a warship durable enough to survive years at sea. A first-rate man-of-war required over 300 tons across its operational life. Without continual resupply, even the mightiest fleet would begin dissolving from within. Nearly all of the world's supply came from one place. The boreal forests of Scandinavia and the Baltic hinterlands produced pine tar of a quality no other region could match, and by the mid-17th century, Sweden had turned that advantage into a weapon. The Stockholm Tar Company, a state-backed monopoly, controlled virtually all tar exports leaving the Baltic. England, France, the Dutch Republic, and Spain had no choice but to pay Swedish prices or find another way. Sweden did not need the largest army in Europe. It needed to sit astride the single supply line every navy depended upon, and it did exactly that for nearly a century. For our viewers who study self-reliance, the lesson cuts deep. The person who controls the critical resource controls the situation. Each empire responded differently to the stranglehold, and their responses reveal something profound about survival under scarcity. The Dutch, unable to grow forests on their waterlogged lowlands, reinvented the ship itself. The Fluit's ship, or Fluit, used simplified rigging and an optimized hull that consumed a fraction of the tar and timber of a conventional warship. It was a survival adaptation dressed up as an engineering achievement, and it handed the Dutch merchant fleet a decisive edge for generations. When you cannot secure the resource, you redesign your system to need less of it. England took a more aggressive path. Westward, the towering white pines of New England, reaching 200 feet and producing the finest mast timber in the known world, became Crown property overnight. The White Pine Acts reserved every suitable tree for the Royal Navy, blazed with the King's broad arrow. Colonial lumbermen who defied the law were prosecuted. The resentment festered for decades, erupting in the Pine Tree Riot of 1772, a confrontation almost never taught in schools, yet sitting in the direct lineage of the American Revolution. Resource wars do not always begin with cannon fire. Sometimes they begin with an axe and a government stamp. Step back from the individual stories and a single truth emerges. Every empire of the Age of Sail was at its foundation a supply chain management operation. Warships, admirals, and battles all rested on pine forests and tar kilns. Nations did not fall because they lost battles. They fell because they lost access to the materials that made ships possible. Today we speak of rare earth minerals and semiconductor supply chains. with the same urgency that Elizabethan naval administrators spoke of Baltic tar. The pattern is eternal, and it belongs to every person who has ever asked what they would do if the supply chain simply stopped. The tar is still burning in that Baltic kiln. Learn what it cost empires to run out of it, and let that teach you something about what you keep close. If this episode opened your eyes to the resource wars that shaped our world, subscribe to Fieldcraft Chronicles for more cinematic history that connects the past to the skills of today. Share this video with every history lover, bushcrafter, and self-reliance thinker in your life. They deserve to know this story.